A lot has been said about the mass censorship movement carried out by the political left, but censoring political opponents, albeit fun for Democrats, isn't enough. They need to do more to teach their opponents a lesson and deter onlookers from ever attempting to go against their agenda. They don't just want you ignored and censored, they want your economic demise. To make this happen, they will harass you, your business, and your business partners for daring to conduct business with whom they disapprove. In this video, we'll discuss how Democrats are economic terrorists. And by economic terrorists, I mean Democrats are a group that uses any and every means necessary to inflict as much financial damage as possible to their opponents. We've all heard the advertiser boycotts, going after the advertisers of Fox anchors like Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity.
Right now, it's promoting an ad boycott. It says, sign up to join the effort to encourage Hannity's advertisers to stop financially supporting his propaganda. Have you succeeded in peeling off any advertisers?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have statements from 30 companies that have committed that they're not going to advertise on Sean Hannity's program.
It's not enough to smear them. You have to hurt them financially by harassing advertisers of their show. When CNN discovered ads on InfoWars channels from companies like Nike, Acer, 20th Century Fox, Expedia, among others, they harassed these advertisers to get them to stop.
To try to take away any commentator's advertisers?
I don't like it at all.
Then why are you doing it?
Well, because I think at some point you are forced to do it. That you sort of reach a critical mass of advertisers that don't want to be associated with the program anymore. And as a result of that, the ad rates start to decline. The quality of the advertisers willing to advertise on that program goes down, and it no longer becomes commercially sustainable or viable.
You're a liberal group. Do you fear that if this works, Rachel Maddow's show and other liberal shows will be targeted?
I think that would be radically unfair.
Conservative site Breitbart has been the target of an onslaught of left-wing economic jihads over the past few years. Brands like Allstate, ModCloth, Nest, Earthlink, among others, have blacklisted Breitbart in an attempt to financially suffocate the conservative site. AppNexus, one of the largest platforms used by advertisers to run ads all over the internet, publicly banned Breitbart from accessing its platform, an unprecedented move at the time. Ever since, Democrats have smelled blood in the water, and activists have been encouraging advertisers to blacklist Breitbart altogether. As of March 2017, more than 1,300 brands have boycotted Breitbart. After Trump's election, big platforms have significantly dialed back their transactions with the conservative website. For example, during the first 2 months of 2016, the big ad platforms were collectively responsible for purchasing about 15% of Breitbart's ad space. By early 2017, that number was reduced to less than 0.5%. Ad tech vendor Rocket Fuel, one of the fascist companies that automatically blacklist Breitbart for being conservative, was asked if blacklisting conservative sites violates the First Amendment. Rocket Fuel's CEO said, "We are not trying to legislate or enforce policy that restricts the ability to express views," which of course is a blatant lie. Another fascist platform says they recommend conservative sites like Breitbart be blacklisted, and about 90% of their clients take their recommendation. Many other conservative sites like Town Hall, The Blaze, and National Review have also had declines due to economic terrorists expanding their territory. Some media buyers are even blacklisting mainstream news outlets like Fox News. Unilever, the second largest advertiser in the world, threatened Facebook and Google with a boycott if they do not take steps to curb anger and hate on their platforms. If you think the hate they're referring to is about Louis Farrakhan, yes again, but don't forget Team 1984, aka Google. Team 1984 works diligently to disguise their tyranny because the whole "don't be evil" slogan doesn't resonate as much when you spend your time actually doing evil. AdSense, a tool that allows smaller websites to generate revenue from ads that they get through Team 1984, had its hate speech policy expanded. The changes were meant to address a more divisive and toxic online environment and an increasing amount of content at the edge of what we consider traditionally to be hate speech, which I like how they say traditionally in there, like there's a long-standing precedent for hate speech. The policy is now expanded to include more groups like immigrants and refugees and to apply to discriminatory pages that before would not have been covered. Because if you're Team 1984 and want to financially damage conservatives, you can expand your hate speech policy, increasing the broadness of the language and topics that deserve to be stripped of ad revenue in order to financially cripple smaller conservative sites and blogs. Just as Islamic terrorists attack societies who enjoy freedoms that they don't approve of, so too do economic terrorists among the left. But in the case of advertisers and brands, their weapon of choice is harassment. Twitter account Sleeping Giants is the fascist leader in harassing brands to boycott conservative publications. Sleeping Giants tracks advertisers worldwide and are committed to stop advertising on Breitbart and conservative sites like it. There are 2,200 on the list as of June 2017, which has grown since. The fascist Twitter account Sleeping Giants was named a DigiDay Changemaker, an honor within the advertising industry. Sleeping Giants regularly post their harassment on social media, prompting applause from their own brown shirt mafia following. Another liberal group, Grab Your Wallet, urges people to boycott companies that are doing business with or endorsing Trump. The boycott list includes forced 62 retailers, nonprofits, and even a movie produced by Harvey Weinstein to ditch Trump products. I especially like how they included Harvey Weinstein in the article and put that name with Trump's to sort of link them together, although Harvey Weinstein is a big Democrat and was friends with Obama and visited the White House 13 times. But now that he's a known rapist, he gets linked with Trump, so I did appreciate that little tactic there. The list included basically all the major retailers from Amazon to Dillard's to Bed Bath & Beyond, Jet, Macy's, TJ Maxx, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, and a few dozen others. But Amazon wants in on the fun.
It has banned Jihad Watch. It's banned the American Freedom Defense Initiative and other organizations that oppose jihad terror and the Sharia oppression of women and other minorities from participating in its charity funding program.
Amazon barred a Christian legal group, the Alliance Defending Freedom, from taking part in their Amazon Smile program, which allows nonprofits to recoup a small fraction of the money their supporters spend through Amazon. They are able to do this and tell themselves they're not awful because Amazon lets notable left-wing smear operation, the Southern Poverty Law Center, determine which groups are allowed to take part, even though an Amazon spokesperson couldn't say whether they consider the SPLC an unbiased arbiter. Amazon does allow the Islamic Center of Jersey City on the Amazon Smile program, whose imam called Jews apes and pigs and requested Allah's help in killing them, along with the Islamic Society of North America. Despite a 2009 federal court ruling, the U.S. has ample evidence of ties between them and terrorist group Hamas. Other jihadi affiliates like the Islamic Circle of North America, which promotes the establishment of an Islamic caliphate with several ties to Islamic radical groups, are also on the Amazon Smile program. But Amazon wasn't done there. In April 2018, Amazon terminated their Amazon Associates program with legal insurrection, closed their account, and confiscated their remaining funds. And the decision was final and there would be no appeal without any prior indication of a problem. Amazon also removed the website Jihad Watch. The clear implication is that Amazon removed Jihad Watch from the Associates program because guess who? The SPLC says they're a hate group. But Amazon and its friends Apple and YouTube have been urged to cut ties with the NRA TV as well. A Change.org petition was pushed urging Amazon to end its relationship with NRA TV. According to the Huffington Post, some woman who leads a gun control group says NRA TV is home to the NRA's most dangerous and violence-inciting propaganda. More irrelevant people were interviewed, including some guy who's a friend of another guy whose daughter was at a school where a school shooting took place. He said the NRA has long ignored its role in promoting gun violence and betrayed the names of good and responsible owners, and a company like Amazon should not spread their message by doing business with them. But like most Democrats, he followed up his comments saying he supports the First Amendment, although his previous statement makes it clear that he doesn't. But many companies have in fact started boycotting the NRA. Companies like Symantec, MetLife, Best Western Enterprise, Alamo Avis, United, Delta, and on and on. These NRA boycotts are all coming shortly after 17 people were killed in a shooting in Parkland, Florida, which had absolutely nothing to do with the NRA. But the economic terrorists have since moved past websites and advertiser boycotts, so they've started targeting financial institutions and insurance providers. Since many big banks, financial institutions, and insurance providers have blacklisted the NRA from their services, some of which are critical for large businesses to operate, the NRA is in financial trouble, which is the point. The NRA has also been stripped of insurance coverage. Without general liability coverage, the NRA cannot maintain its physical premises, convene in off-site meetings and events, and operate educational programs, etc. The financial damage may also end the NRA's video streaming service and magazines. The lawsuit says Cuomo and the New York State Department of Financial Services will imminently deprive the NRA of basic bank depository services and other financial services essential to the NRA's corporate existence. The lawsuit stems from New York financial regulators halting the sale of what they say is an illegal NRA-branded insurance policy called CarryGuard, which acts to protect legal gun owners from costs incurred through using a gun. But New York says this policy defends gun owners who commit intentional wrongdoing. However, the NRA shows that New York was not content to block that single insurance product, which they would have done if they actually believed that, but instead campaigned to sever the NRA's ties to a wide range of financial service providers. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, even tweeted, "I urge companies in New York State to revisit any ties they have to the NRA and consider their reputations and responsibility to the public," which sounds just like a guy trying to destroy the NRA. Other payment processors have also been cutting ties with businesses in the name of gun control. Bank of America stopped financing companies who make AR-style guns. An Idaho senator sent letters criticizing Bank of America and Citigroup, which decided to restrict sales of firearms by its business customers, writing, "We should all be concerned if banks like yours seek to replace legislators and policymakers and attempt to manage social policy by limiting access to credit." But more mainstream financial institutions took part. Visa and Mastercard blocked donations to the David Horowitz Freedom Center in an attempt to strangle a conservative group from financial life. After the guess who, SPLC, labeled them a hate group. The Freedom Center supports a number of conservative outlets such as Jihad Watch and Front Page Magazine. Horowitz said the move by Visa and Mastercard is nothing less than an assault on conservative voices from the Soros-funded Media Matters and SPLC operation. It's cynical, calculated, and supported by the Democratic Party. The fact that Mastercard and Visa are now part of the juggernaut indicates how dangerous this has become.
I have been dropped from Patreon at the behest of Mastercard which claimed that it had done so because my website featured illegal content. Since then, Mastercard has ignored a letter from an attorney, and Discover Card has likewise begun to refuse to process donations to my organization Jihad Watch. These credit card companies appear to be digging in on their commitment to denying service to those with political views they dislike. The implications of this are ominous for everyone. Mastercard and Discover Card are almost certainly acting against me at the urging of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which for years has defamed me as a hate group leader and an anti-Muslim extremist. These are not mere words. Tyler O'Neill reported last September that former SPLC spokesman Mark Potok declared, "Sometimes the press will describe us as monitoring hate groups. I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, completely destroy them." Potok added, "You are able to destroy these groups sometimes by the things you publish. It's not so much that they will bring down the police or the federal agents on their head, it's that you can sometimes so mortally embarrass these groups that they will be destroyed. We see this political struggle. We're not trying to change anybody's mind. We're trying to wreck the groups. We're trying to destroy them." By getting two major credit card companies on board, the SPLC is well on its way in my case, unless Mastercard and Discover Card reverse themselves, and I haven't given up on that. Once it is generally accepted that people can be barred from services based on their political views, America has ceased to exist as a free society. What will be the next step? Will Mastercard and Discover deny me a personal credit card as well because I'm on the SPLC's hit list? Will the SPLC pressure other companies to deny service to me and others that the SPLC has defamed? In 5 or 10 years, if this trend is not checked, will it be possible for me and others whom the SPLC is trying to destroy to buy a house, buy a car, buy groceries? These aren't hysterical questions. If the precedent is established that people can be discriminated against based on their political views, there's no telling where it could end, or if it will end at all. The choice before us is whether we will continue to exist as a free society or whether we will become a totalitarian state in which holding the proper opinions is indispensable to being able to function as a citizen at all. It isn't just I who am threatened. At risk is the basic and hard-won principle of equality of access to services. When that goes, our other freedoms will swiftly follow, more swiftly than most Americans realize.
Meanwhile, Visa and Mastercard have not blacklisted and support a top Hamas terrorist who's been walking around with a Visa debit card and quite likely a Mastercard credit card. Online payment processing company PayPal canceled Jihad Watch's account for exposing Muslim terrorists. Meanwhile, the Islamic State used PayPal to send money to jihadis inside the US, but that revelation wasn't enough to stop it, as ISIS has been using eBay and PayPal to funnel money to ISIS operatives for some time. Later on, PayPal would reinstate Jihad Watch's account after some public outcry, but PayPal also booted another conservative site, Bare Naked Islam, which, like Jihad Watch, exposes Muslim terrorists at home and abroad. It also kicked them off their platform with no explanation and stole their balance that they had in there for the past 180 days. Bare Naked Islam also tried other payment platforms like WePay, Authorize.net, and Patreon, and each time their application was initially accepted, but would later be denied for no reason, other than the fact that they exposed Muslim terrorism. But PayPal wasn't done there. After all, it wouldn't be a party without Alex Jones, so PayPal also stopped doing business with him. A lot of these moves came as a result of a ProPublica article which cried out for PayPal, Amazon, Newsmax, and others for maintaining partnerships with Jihad Watch. After Charlottesville, more companies disavowed relationships with extremist groups. Even the web services company Cloudflare, which had long defended its laissez-faire approach to political expression, finally ended its relationship with neo-Nazi site The Daily Stormer. The director of the ADL Center of Extremism said, "I can't recall a time where the tech industry was so in step in their response to hate on their platforms. Stopping financial support to hate sites seems like a win-win for everyone. Forgetting to mention it's only a win-win if you hate freedom." Both Google and GoDaddy canceled domain registrations for the Daily Stormer, who I guess is some white nationalist site. The Cloudflare CEO decided to end hosting for the site as well and said he woke up in a bad mood and decided someone shouldn't be allowed on the internet. His rationale was the people at the Daily Stormer were bad and he doesn't like them. He admitted that his decision was dangerous, violating the core principles of free speech on the internet, because it does, but he reassured his employees that he did not want to set a precedent for this, despite the fact that's exactly what he just did. And then he doubled down on his Orwellian doublespeak by adding adding the right answer is for us to be consistently content neutral, which he just proved he is not. I couldn't care less about the Daily Stormer, but like all insatiable movements of the left, there's nothing stopping left-wingers to look for new ground to conquer. Companies like Cloudflare and others who provide internet infrastructure will come under increasing pressure. We know from history that the hate label is broadly applied for political purposes and will be used only against right-off-center websites. Being cut off from domain registers and other aspects of the internet backbone is something we expect from totalitarian governments. Now that power is in the control of almost uniformly left-wing corporate managers. ProPublica poses as a middle-of-the-road, non-profit journalistic operation, but in reality, it's funded by a stable of uber-liberal donors, including George Soros' Open Society Foundations. Since they've turned to sites like Jihad Watch, left-wing ProPublica sent a reporter out to issue not-so-veiled threats against conservative websites. It's blatantly obvious that the goal here is to tank websites they disagree with by mounting a campaign to pressure their advertisers and tech providers to drop them as clients. The letter that ProPublica sent reads, "I am a reporter at ProPublica, a non-profit investigative newsroom in New York. I am contacting you to let you know that we are including your website in a list of sites that have been designated as hate or extremist by the American Defamation League or the Southern Poverty Law Center. We identified several tech companies on your website: PayPal, Amazon, Newsmax, and Rev Content. Can you confirm that you receive funds from your relationship with those tech companies? How would the loss of those funds affect your operations, and how would you be able to replace them? Many people opposed to sites like yours are currently pressuring tech companies to cease the relationship with them. What is your view of this campaign? In other words, nice website you've got there. It would be a shame if anything happened to it." Robert Spencer responded to ProPublica's not-so-subtle threat. "The intent of your questions, and no doubt of your forthcoming article, will be to try to compel these sites to cut off any connection with us based on our opposition to jihad terror. Are you comfortable with what you're enabling? Not only are you inhibiting honest analysis of the nature and magnitude of the jihad threat, but you're aiding the attempt to deny people a platform based on their political views." He added that the true extremism was displayed by groups that seek to censor the internet, and that by asking questions about the tech platforms on his site, they were aiding and abetting a quintessentially fascist enterprise. But there are other fascists that wanted in on the fun. GoFundMe banned conservative organizations from using its platform to receive donations at every opportunity, including, yes, Jihad Watch and Jamie Glassov's show, who was raising funds for an anti-Sharia law show because speaking out against Sharia is blasphemy to left-wing economic terrorists. GoFundMe also banned the organizer of a Draw Muhammad contest who was promoting free speech and expression in the Western world. The organizer was raising funds to pay for protection for his family from jihadis who want to murder him for drawing Muhammad, but economic terrorists of the left often take the side of actual terrorists, like in this instance. But don't forget Patreon, who, among other conservatives, banned Lauren Southern from receiving donations. Fascist group Hope Not Hate even bragged about harassing Patreon until they banned her on Twitter. Patreon cited the reason for the ban is that Lauren Southern's words are going to get people killed.
Patreon has kicked me off of their website, essentially eviscerating the majority of my income. You may be wondering, what could their reason for doing this be? Well, let me just read you their email. "We sometimes must take a closer look at what our creators are doing with the funds they earn through Patreon. It appears that you are currently raising funds in order to take part in activities that are likely to cause loss of life. We have therefore decided to remove your page from Patreon." That's a pretty freaking incredible claim there, Patreon. That should take some pretty incredible evidence behind it, shouldn't it? But what did you provide as evidence? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely freaking nothing.
These crowdfunding platforms and online payment processors have become so important to conservatives because Team 1984, aka Google, has been censoring and demonetizing conservatives throughout YouTube for years now. YouTube announced a new catch system to flag controversial or religious and supremacist videos as defined by smear organizations like the SPLC and ProPublica. They said they won't remove the content entirely, but instead hide them and demonetize them from YouTube revenue.
Increasingly, though, Google seems to be letting politics dictate who is allowed to make money from their platform. Demonetized. That's the word YouTube uses when they tell you you can't make money from them anymore.
YouTube has a new naughty corner for controversial religious and, quote, supremacist videos. Well, what does that mean, you ask? YouTube has clarified how it plans to handle videos that don't violate any of its policies, but still contain, quote, offensive religious and supremacist content. They're going to hide them and make sure that they can't make any money. Right-wing alternative media figures and, quote, conspiracy theorists have been complaining for weeks that YouTube is already manipulating the algorithms to limit their reach and revenue. YouTube has also admitted that they're literally going to start manipulating the search results for certain topics and show people videos to try to debunk the ideas that they're looking up. I'm not kidding. So for example, if you're looking for a video about why it's crazy to say that there's 85 different genders, They're going to manipulate the search results to show videos saying why there should be 85 different genders. We've started to roll out features from Jigsaw's redirect method to YouTube. When people search for sensitive keywords on YouTube, they will be redirected towards a playlist of curated YouTube videos that directly confront and debunk violent extremist messages, which also just means the truth.
But it's not just websites. Joining the ranks of other prominent book burners like the Nazis and ISIS, the modern left now makes sure you can't read what they don't approve. So they've also tried to ban books. Liberal reporters would attempt to get Robert Spencer's book about Muhammad banned, and sometimes successful. Some schools like UCLA would also ban Robert Spencer's book about jihad terrorism. A best-selling conservative author had a new book coming out that was banned on Facebook even before it was released. The author's first book was about the failures of the Obama administration and was an instant hit, skyrocketing into #1 on Amazon in the category. But his follow-up book was pre-banned. The New York Times reveals its political bias in refusing to list Pamela Geller's book because they don't want people to buy it. Despite outselling other books on the list, Geller's book did not make it onto the bestseller list at all. The reason it didn't make the cut is simple. The New York Times employs bias when it fills up the ranks of its lists, omitting books that editors in charge do not want promoted. In September, conservative publishing company Regenry cut its ties with the New York Times following allegations of the newspaper's left-leaning slant and picking books to feature on the list. Muslim Brotherhood linked Keith Ellison demands Amazon stop selling books from anyone the SPLC has designated as a hate group. But this isn't necessarily new. Back in 2014, a shocking exchange took place where Obama's DOJ made an unabashed argument for the government being able to stop a book from being sold. When Justice Anthony Kennedy asked the DOJ if the Obama administration was truly arguing that according to the Constitution, book sales could be prohibited, the DOJ official replied, yes, if the book contained the functional equivalent of express advocacy. Thankfully, the constitutional amendment didn't pass, although 49 Democratic senators voted for it. Don't think liberals are content with just books or websites. Businesses can't hide either. Liberals have been targeting restaurant chains like Chick-fil-A for years. Their crime? The owner of the chain is a religious Christian, and so he likes traditional marriage, which means he's basically a KKK Klansman and worthy of boycotting. University SJWs at schools like Fordham and Nebraska fight at every turn when the Chick-fil-A restaurant dares to intrude on their campus. Politicians in Chicago and Boston promised never to allow a Chick-fil-A to open a store in their city because being a Christian just won't fly under their watch. But since they've gotten bored attacking Chick-fil-A, the latest call for boycotting targets In-N-Out Burger after Democratic Party chairman in California insisted the restaurant chain be boycotted because they donate to Republicans. Even though In-N-Out Burger donates to Democrats too, pay no attention to that. But in California, this certainly isn't new. Owner of the LA restaurant El Coyote faced harassments and boycotts for donating $500 to Proposition 8 because how dare a business owner in California donate to a piece of legislation the left doesn't support. Liberals harassed her place of business and demanded that she make an equal donation to their cause, which she doesn't support. The art director of California Musical Theater donated $1,000 to the Prop 8 cause, and for that, he was harassed until he resigned. Later, he pledged to donate $1,000 to LGBT lobbying group Human Rights Campaign to match what he donated to Prop 8 because he couldn't get the gay fascists to leave him alone. The director of the Los Angeles Film Festival also donated $1,500 to defend traditional marriage, which also cost him his job, and he too would donate $1,500 to their cause. Whether it's a Colorado baker, Jack Phillips, who had his case go all the way to the Supreme Court because he didn't openly violate his religion and make a gay wedding cake, or the bakery closing in Oregon for the same reasons, being ordered to pay $135,000 to lesbians who experienced mental rape because Christians wouldn't bake a cake for them, or florists in Vermont and Seattle who have been under siege and faced financial demise, or farmers in New York who are court-ordered to go into a re-education program for their Christianity, or farmers markets in Michigan banning those who oppose them, or t-shirt makers in Kentucky who refuse to make gay pride t-shirts, or pizza shops in Indiana, or women's only spas who also face financial ruin if they don't admit transgender customers, even though it's a women's only spa, or if they don't sue you to try to financially destroy you, they'll just threaten to harass you until you close the business. The list goes on and on. Or bars banning certain beers if their owner supports Donald Trump, even though the owner of the beer company has never said anything regarding the LGBT community. Mike Pence is Trump's vice president, and as one bar manager says, no one has more hate for the LGBT community than Mike Pence. And don't think for a second it's a two-way street. That's not how economic terrorists roll. They're allowed to do all the things they protest and boycott others for. So if they refuse to bake an anti-gay wedding cake, or refuse service to those who voted for someone they don't approve of, or kick Christians out of their place of business for their religion, that's A-okay. And while economic terrorists aim to destroy businesses who don't comply, they will also leverage the economic might of big businesses to pressure cities and politicians to comply with their demands. Because if they don't, there will be economic consequences to pay. Over 60 corporations targeted states like North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas if they dare to prevent boys from using girls' bathrooms. Like the other targets of economic terrorists, they use financial leverage to force their obedience. Several universities canceled games in states like North Carolina or Mississippi over transgender bathrooms in order to hurt those schools financially. NCAA. Vox Sports also urged the NCAA to expel BYU, which would kill them financially because of their religion. The NCAA even pulled its national championship game from North Carolina for not complying, so they will strip the city of millions of dollars. Despite the blatant contradiction that the NCAA has gender-specific athletic programs, now the NCAA says it will boycott the state through 2022 if they don't legislate how the NCAA wants them to legislate. The NBA also canceled the All-Star game, costing the city of Charlotte millions of dollars. What's comical about it, though, is both the NCAA and NBA agreed to host these events in Charlotte when North Carolina did not have a transgender bathroom bill. They're boycotting them now for not creating a transgender bathroom bill, because they say so. North Carolina governor estimated such collective boycotts could cost the state nearly $4 billion. But the NFL would also join in the fun, threatening states like Georgia that they won't be able to have a Super Bowl unless they comply, and hosting a Super Bowl can bring in as much as $250 million. Liberal sports writers continue to drum up the controversy and pressure institutions to ban events from cities or states who dare to pass policies or refrain from passing policies that they want them to pass.
Could what happened, or could what has happened in North Carolina happen in Texas in terms of different leagues pulling these events, costing the state, hundreds of millions of dollars?
Oh, absolutely. I think the question here is one of how much Texas stands to lose if potentially premium sports events get moved. I mean, estimates range upwards towards $8.5 billion, which, that's an awful lot of penalty to have to pay.
But it's not just corporations. Government coercion would also come into play. Obama threatened to strip Tennessee of federal funding if they don't let boys to go bathroom with girls, costing the state an estimated $1.2 billion for K-12 and higher education. Multiple liberal officials banned government-funded travel to states that govern themselves how they choose. In Canada, government officials have also threatened to defund religious schools because they'd violate their diversity policy, although the government has refused to provide any explanation as to how. For example, diversity is threatened by a school's policy that reflects the school's belief in the Bible. It doesn't matter because they want what they want. But economic terrorists would also use similar means to hit their opponents. Time magazine published a lengthy piece about how churches should lose tax-exempt status for not supporting same-sex marriage. They claim the tax-exempt status for Christians forces the IRS to decide what's religion and thus has entangled church and state in the worst way. Those who oppose to stripping churches of their tax exemptions say it would hurt donations to all charities. But the author responds with, "We'd have fewer church soup kitchens, but countries that truly care about poverty don't rely on churches to run soup kitchens." In other words, countries who care force the government to do charity as opposed to personally giving to charity. But of course, in reality, the opposite is true. Several bills in California were proposed to try and eliminate funding for Christian colleges or allow members of the LGBTQ community to sue them for not supporting their lifestyle. New Jersey would also try to end funding for Christian universities. They've also tried to strip school vouchers for Christian schools. They've tried to strip funding that was given to make kids safer on playgrounds from Christian playgrounds. They've threatened university groups with stripping their funding if they don't let people who oppose the group's most central reason for existence, or forcing students to pledge support for causes they oppose in order to get summer job funding. They've tried to force student groups that oppose them to actually champion their causes or lose funding. They've stolen donations to conservative groups and put that money into causes that they want to put the money towards, or just outright banning causes they don't agree with while funding student groups that oppose the group they refuse to fund. They've tried forcing taxpayers to pay the legal costs of illegal immigrants to fight deportation against their will. Now they're attempting to let children sue the government for the lack of climate action because children are damaged by climate change. And finally, economic terrorists do everything they can to hinder or altogether ban funding toward conservative causes, or they use threats of litigation or fines to force people to abide by their agenda, whether it's blocking funding for Christian conventions, or targeting fundraising events for people they oppose, or threatening to fine people and businesses up to $250,000 for not using words they demand we use, or suing schools for not using the words they want us to use, or fining business owners $250,000 for telling them his employees shouldn't take so many breaks because they're Muslim. But they won't stop, and they will use bullying, harassment, intimidation, and threats of all kinds to get what they want, especially threats of financial harm, because the left are economic terrorists.
You're a liberal group. Do you fear that if this works, Rachel Maddow's show and other liberal shows will be targeted?
I think that would be radically unfair.